All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Discovering Multifamily podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Scandariato with Red Knight Properties. And today we have a special guest here with us, Bill Ham, who is the COO at Broadwell Property Group. He's also the author of Creative Cash. So we're going to talk about Creative Cash, which is basically creative financing for multifamily real estate. So we're going to discuss Bill's real estate investment strategies. He's used these strategies to buy his first 400 units without ever stepping into a bank or even qualifying for a loan. So we want to learn Bill's story and how he was able to do that. And very excited to have Bill here on the show. So welcome to the show, Bill.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate you having me. Pleasure.
So what is Creative Cash? That's the title of your book. So explain to us what inspired you to write the book and how did you buy 400 units essentially with
Absolutely. Yeah. So been in business about 15 years. Started off, like you said, doing 400 units with 402 units exactly with creative financing. And so that's a combination of lots of different techniques, such as master lease options, seller financing, using debt partners, credit cards even once, but I don't recommend that one. But so that's creative financing. And I have written this book because of the market cycles. And so what everybody has to understand is real estate cycles much like the economy, not in the same sequence as the economy, but it rises and falls. And so I know, because I've been through the past market cycles and recession, what it looks like when it's coming. And one of the big factors in a sort of recession cycle is that lenders start to lend less. They start to pull back. When lending pulls back, that makes distressed assets harder to get financed. That value add deal gets harder to get financed. And that's when creative financing really becomes a very viable tool in that market cycle.
Excellent. So talk to us, what does creative financing mean? I know there's various different strategies, but what's the one that you primarily use?
Primarily, it's seller financing and master lease options. That's probably 80% of what you'll use when you go out there to find creative finance or get a creative financing deal. Yeah, it's very specific to the deal. It's very specific to the seller. So it's not a one size fits all. You really have to sit down and look at the seller and look at the property and figure out what creates value in that particular situation by solving a problem. And that's what creative financing does. It gets you deals by problem solving. And that's what I'm saying. So when lenders pull back, there's not as much debt availability, and a seller has a distressed asset and maybe their loan's coming due. Maybe for some reason they need to exit that property and the numbers aren't working out. That's when you come in and use lease options, seller financing, whatever the case. Seller financing, you could only do that if the seller has enough equity to actually give you financing. So if they don't have a lot of equity in the deal, then you would move to, say, a lease option, something of that nature.
Excellent. Can you explain seller financing versus the lease option for the audience?
Sure. So seller financing is when it's exactly what it sounds like. The seller is going to act as the bank. So you may still put down some or little money. I wouldn't think that you're going to put down no money. So that's not a reasonable thing. But I would expect to put down, anywhere between 10 and 20%. And the seller is actually going to carry back a mortgage, just like a lender. You're going to be the owner of record, but they're going to have a lien against the property. If you don't pay them, they'll foreclose, just like a bank. A lease option or master lease option, the difference being whether you're dealing with multiple units or not. So if we're talking about apartments, we call it a master lease. If it's a single house, we would just call it a lease option, same thing. But that's basically a rent to own scenario where you're going to kind of agree to a price with the seller. And then you're going to have a separate contract that allows you to operate the property. So I'm going to rent, if it were me, I would be renting a property from you with the right to buy it someday in the future. The reason we would do that is that the right to operate contract, the master lease, allows us to stabilize the property, take care of any deferred maintenance or issues. Idea being you want to set that price, the option price, for someday in the future, but you want to set the option price at a value that's a today value. You bring the value of the property up through your operations. Now the property is worth more than the option price, and you have the ability to purchase it back at the option price. So that's roughly what a master lease option and seller financing is for.
Sure, sure, exactly. So when you're dealing with seller financing, lease options, master lease situations, and you're working with the sellers, are they typically shorter term, almost bridge loan style product? Because seller financing, in my experience, you always have to offer a greater rate of return, whereas you were to borrow from a bank, you know, call it 200
Right.
basis points minimum. Let's just say, let's say as of right now, maybe 6%, 6.5.
Right.
So when you're dealing with that, are you usually looking at 3-year, promissory notes? And then what
Correct.
do you do after that? Because then you can actually go to an agency lender or whoever the lender is and take out the loan at a better interest rate.
Absolutely. And that's exit strategy. And that's a very important concept of creative financing is you really have to analyze the exit strategy of the deal first. What are you going to do with it? Is it a fix and flip? Is it a buy and hold and operate? Well, what are you going to do with this piece of property? So that's your exit strategy. And yeah, I agree. You kind of have to look at that first and then analyze the deal to see what it is you're going to do. Is it a takeout financing after the fact? Yes, you typically are probably going to have an interest rate a little bit higher than what you might get at a local lender. You're going to need to incentivize that seller a little more. But I would then negotiate perhaps less down payment, less coming to the table with a lot of capital. And that's kind of what we want to avoid is having to have a lot of cash to get the deal done. So if I'm solving a seller's problem, I want that seller to join me in the deal. I want that seller to bring that property, and I'm going to bring the sweat equity and the work, and that's how we're going to get that deal done together. So I would not want to do a deal where I'm bringing 40% cash and 10% interest and all this kind of thing. So that would not be a very attractive deal. So terms are typically going to be a little bit shorter. This is the idea of creative financing is to go in, stabilize a distressed asset with some help from the seller, and then exit, getting that seller their money and whatever it is they need, and you move on to either a sale, a wholesale, or stabilized long-term financing such as agency debt. Yep.
Sure. So can you, in your book, you gave an example where you're able to increase your network about $500,000 just from a distressed property using these strategies. Can you tell us about it?
Sure, that's what I always say. Try and find valuation through operation, not renovation. So what I want to do is I want to go out and find properties that I can increase the net operating income through the operations, not just through renovations and saying, hey, I'm going to raise the rent. That's a really overplayed concept right now. I think most people that are looking at real estate, and if you're listening to this and you're an LP and you're looking to invest passively, I would be very careful about someone whose business model is only raising the rent. Raising rent should make a good deal great, not a bad deal tolerable. And that's what I'm seeing a lot of people do right now is that they're using this concept of raising the rent in the future to justify overpaying for the building today. That's not a good idea. So, you really want to kind of avoid doing that. But yeah, that's what creative financing is for, is to kind of limit some of that risk so we can go in there and create that value as such as raise rents, things of that nature. But do be careful.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. So how are you when you're, I think it was about 400 units I
Correct.
mentioned in the beginning. So how are you finding sellers open to seller financing or any of the strategies you mentioned? Because it's obviously, as you know, it's a very competitive market given 2021,
Right.
especially if the property's free and clear. A lot of buyers, just like you mentioned, the lending market is back, at least in some respects. So they'll, they could still go 70, 80% to Fannie and Freddie and get, sub 3% on some deals.
Sure.
So how do you, I guess, how are you finding your seller leads, so to speak?
Mhm. Well, over the last 5 years, very slim. And over the next 2 or 3 years, I think you're going to find it to be much, much greater. So I believe we are on the precipice of the market peak right now or thereabouts. And so you have to understand that creative financing is about solving problems, as I've mentioned. So in the past 5 years, if a seller had a problem, they could just park the property on the market listed and probably get more than their asking price. So it's not techniques that we've used a lot over the last 5 years because the market has been inclining so rapidly. So it's not something you're going to really have been hearing a lot about or be familiar with. But going forward, predicting forward, as lenders tighten their criteria, that's when we are going to start using it. And so I am just now starting to see the distress in the market. COVID has started to affect a lot of properties. Tenants are starting to get behind due to the lack of work. The eviction moratorium is stopping landlords from removing those tenants. And so when I'm out analyzing deals, and I look at several deals a week, I'm seeing that there's a lot of rent rolls with tenant balances. These tenants are starting to owe a lot of money. That's going to have to be taken care of at some point in time. Either the government's got to write a big check, or the landlord is going to have to kind of write this bad debt off at some point. That right there is going to make that asset hard to finance. Fannie and Freddie agency debt right now are asking for a year to up to 18 months worth of reserves, principal, interest, tax, and insurance reserves, but they're not giving you any credit on the loan side. The property still has to be functional, still has to hit all of the same requirements that it always did. And so right there, that's an indication that the debt is starting to sort of pull back. Freddie right now, Freddie Mac is requiring 3 years worth of resume. So if you don't have 3 years worth of multifamily experience right now, going and qualifying for one of those loans is going to be difficult. Those are signs that the lenders are starting to retreat a little. And that's where we're going to see the advent of creative financing really kick in. So not been doing it so much over the last 5 years. Over the next 1 to 5, you will see a lot more of it coming.
Excellent. So how are you? So what are you focused on at your company? And I mentioned about 400 units. How are you able to get there? I guess what markets are you in? Where are we going to see the most opportunity once the lenders tighten up even more? Which I agree with you. They have been. It's almost like it's been a tightening, then a loosening, and then a tightening again, and then a loose. So,
yeah.
But
agency tightened up and local lenders have loosened up. Is what it seems to be.
Yeah. But even the agency, I think on the Fannie, it's 9 months now instead of 12 months, or it's 12 months and you can get it back within 9.
Yeah, it's all over the place.
So it's changing all the time. I don't see it going away anytime soon, like you mentioned. So I guess, what markets should we be looking at? You mentioned eviction moratoriums. There's some states that are just completely disregarding it. But there are others that obviously are abiding by it. So where are we going to see the opportunity with that?
I think what we call the smile, and that's that southern belt across the United States. If you kind of imagine a smile across the southern states, ranging from Phoenix, Arizona, over to Atlanta, Georgia, maybe the Carolinas. I think that belt, that southern belt there, is going to be your widest zone for opportunity. Notwithstanding Texas's current issues with their power grid and all that, I think Texas. I think the Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona market, and Georgia and the Carolinas, northern Florida. I think those are going to be your strongest markets going forward. I think the major metros ultimately are going to hold value longest, but I'm also afraid that I think your major metros may be the areas that kind of become less landlord friendly going forward. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and we have seen this state certainly move towards the more liberal point of view. Not for better or for worse, I have no opinion on that, but I'm just saying it seems that our laws are starting to move towards the tenant favor less than the landlord favor. And traditionally, we've been a very landlord friendly state. So I think the major metros may become more tenant friendly, whereas the rural areas may still maintain landlord friendly. So it's really kind of a give and a take. I think you're going to get better returns in the big city, but you're going to deal with more politics there. So it kind of depends on what flavor you feel like dealing with.
Sure. Yeah, the politics are definitely not for everybody. So how can people find your book, Creative Cash?
Absolutely. Creative Cash is on Amazon right now. You can get it in paperback and Kindle. I believe in about a week we'll have it on Audible. So you can find it in all three, but definitely get it on Amazon. And we have a masterclass and the book on creativeapartmentdeals.com. So if you want more information than the book, creativeapartmentdeals.com. If If you want to reach out to me personally, it's bill@gobroadwell.com.
Great. And we'll have a link to everything you just mentioned in our show notes so our listeners can reach out to you at any time. And if you liked what you heard and or saw today, if you could please give us a rating and review on iTunes, it'll help my message and Bill's message get out to a greater audience. And we would appreciate that. So we'll have a description to your website and everything else and the social media platforms and on iTunes. So definitely check that out. And just want to thank you again for coming on our show today, and hope to have you on again soon when, the real distress starts to hit. So.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you, Bill.